Peace, human families of the planet Earth. I am your host, Aseer the Duke of Tears, along with my co-host, Selena, the Empress of 10,000 Years, Saga, this greatest super Heru community. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. Love and light to you. And to all of those who lost loved ones, you know what I'm saying, in the past week, month, day, hour, love and light. They definitely in a better place. Stay up out of here. We also want to say we don't want to be, can they hear me? We don't want to be redundant, and we don't want to be, okay. We don't want to be redundant, and we don't want to be insensitive. But I told you they was not going to lock that devil up for killing that young man. I told you when it first happened that a year from now, we're going to be talking about the thing, and we're going to be bugging about how these people just let this nigga go for shooting his man. Do you realize it? Do you realize that since Trayvon Martin was killed here in Florida, it was over 10 other shootings of young black men, of young quote-unquote black men in the so-called society by all white men. You know what I'm saying? So what this is telling me, brothers and sisters, is that everything that we have been talking about since we started Super Heru Radio, in my opinion, has kind of been leading to all of this. And what this is telling you straight up, the reason why they are killing these brothers left and right, up and down, back and forth, is because these people's families, greater communities, whatever, are not trying to come out of the United States government as United States citizens. United States citizens are subject to the military installation or the military industrial complex of the United States. That's who's running the country. Your so-called military industrial complex. And these are the ones who are dealing with all the satanic ritual killings and all of that shit that they run out of the Pentagon. And that the real reason, again, that they will continue to get off for killing young black males is because those young black males, mothers and fathers, are not stepping up and giving them a nationality. Niggas are like, oh, well, how a nationality going to stop a cop from beating you? You know why? Because pigs think twice before they roll up on nobles with feathers on. You can say whatever you want about Moors, but it's very rare I hear about a Moor going through some police brutality shit. What I hear is them just kidnapping Moors and taking them wherever they need to go and ransom them or whatever. But they ain't police brutality in these niggas. They ain't shooting them down in the street in the back. And do you know that they killed another 11-year-old boy today in Arkansas, Little Rock, allegedly stole a truck? So, of course, that means he should die. So some devil pig cracker shot this little boy in the back, 11 years old. 11. Another black boy. And the word they use is another person taken down within 24 hours of the Trayvon verdict. So, again, if the crackers is peeping the symbolism, how come your own people ain't? You know what our people doing? Our people on Facebook talking shit the way that they always do. Talking about, oh, you know, well, this happened now, and now, you know, Guru Maya's down here, and you know the devil Hindu chick that be out here hugging everybody every day. And so all she do is she travel around the world and just hugs everybody and then just makes the world a better place, right? Okay, so where was she at the night before the verdict, if that's the case? Why was she go and hug Trayvon moms and her pops? No. Because our people are suffering for lack of knowledge. You, as a black person, if you are a person and you call yourself black in this society, okay, Negro, African American, whatever, that means you technically are not alive. Do you understand? You don't see niggas get it twisted. Niggas who argue me up and down. Oh, that don't mean that, Mo. That don't mean that. That mean this. That's nah. No. When you call yourself any type of colorable term in the United States, you have told them that you are naturally dead. Therefore, somebody who is naturally dead cannot be tried. If that person gets killed by somebody, the person who killed them cannot be tried for murder because technically you're naturally dead already. Naturally dead is the same as being civically dead. And the naturally dead people are the people who are caught up in the Cestui 1666 trust that was set up by the Virginia Tobacco Company, right? And was allied with the Opus Dei Vatican Society of Jesus to sink and make the living people here dead. You, according to them, have abandoned your government. You, according to them, are absent of your true self. You, according to them, are beyond the sea, or worse, on sea level. Therefore, if you're on sea level, that means then that you are under the jurisdiction of the law of the sea, which is the captain's law, which is the captain is always right, which is the captain goes down with the ship, which is, which is the captain is always right, which is you do what I say or you walk the plank, right? That's the life of people in the United States. So everybody you see around here walking down the street on two legs, forget the legs. They actually walking on, they not walking at all. They're actually floating on boats. The only de jure people on the entire planet are the Moors of North, Central, South America, the adjoining islands, dominions, and territories. That's it, y'all. The Africans ain't de jure because that place wasn't called Africa. So if they are calling themselves that, then that means that they are putting themselves in an alternate reality. That is not real. That's why when you speak to Africans from the continent of Africa and you ask them where they're from, they will tell you what country within Africa they come from. But even they got it twisted. Even they got a false history that they are now perpetuating because they've been getting money for it. Hey, Sam. Because they've been getting money for it, too. I'm glad you're doing it. And so it's created a perpetual vacuum. You got Willie Richards, James Chaney, Michael McDonald, Michael Griffin, Yusef Hawkins, James Byrd Jr., Trayvon Martin, Emmett Till, Rodney King. Like, how many people we going to keep doing? But now, your president, this is how much of a piece of shit that nigga is. This nigga now is traveling around the country, traveling around the world, trying to get everybody to be gay. At the same time, he's there, they dealing with this whole Trayvon shit. This nigga's taking himself across Africa, trying to get them to acknowledge gay rights. This is this nigga's platform. And now the thing with Zimmerman now, because he got acquitted, of course, you know how white people do. Oh, well, it's not about race. Actually, it's not about race at all. It's really about gun control. Yeah? Then how come everybody that's controlling their guns is shooting niggas? How about that? So what do these niggas do? They do dumb shit. I'm watching this thing, and I'm seeing this wrap-up because, so the way that he's going to protest what's happening in Guantanamo Bay, this nigga's going to let them torture him. Like, yeah, I'm trying to show everybody what they're really doing to the people there, so I'm going to have them do it to me. Because during Ramadan, what happens is everybody in Guantanamo Bay, they start fasting. And remember, I told you about this devil what this devil do is if he know that you fasting, he feeds you. If he know that you want to eat, he make you fast. If you tired, he'll make you keep you awake. If you want to stay awake, he make you tired. If you're hungry, he keep the food from you, right? If you not hungry, he force you to eat. If you're not thirsty, he's going to force you to drink. If you are thirsty, then he won't. It's always the opposite of what you say because he is programming you to be on the opposite end of your true self. I'm going to keep it extra funky and real with everybody with this shit because it's a lot deeper than we letting even on to it. Okay, if you notice, they said that the reason why the brother, that a lot of things happened to him is because he was a person in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is what they said about the young brother. They kept, and they said it more than once, and I peeped that. They're using the word person. Then I'm watching Fox News. One of them called him. They said, well, we can't be, we're at a stage now where we have to look at persons and non-persons as something more. This is what they said. So when he said non-person, I started doing the knowledge to that because I know that term is a little different than person, right? So when we look up non-person, right, guess what it say? A non-person is a citizen or a member of a group who lacks, loses, or is forcibly denied social or legal status, especially basic human rights, or who effectively ceases to have a record of their existence within a society. In Latin, that's called dominatio memoranae, right? From a point of view of traceability, documentation, or existence. The term also refers to a people whose death is unverifiable and about which inquires the result in a blank wall or stare of basically saying nobody knows why. Ain't that what they doing with this nigga right now? That's what they doing right now. So non-persons are people who have a real culture, but the society that they live in is treating them like they don't. And the fact that they call this young brother a non-person, they knew. Now I'm watching this shit, and then I'm watching this dude. Now look at this dude Zimmerman. He's like a Cuban Heeb or something. He's like a Mexican Jew or something like that. Spanish Jew or whatever, right? Not Sephardim like, but like Ashkenazim type. Now there's two priests involved in the case. The first priest was the judge, Zimmerman's father. The second priest is the judge that's presiding over the issue. Now they know this young man's family ain't going to get no justice. They know that it was murder, right? They know that this person murdered this young man. But they want to make it seem like because this nigga smoked weed one time, that somehow he was viable. So what that means is that we have to find the most minutest, irrelevant thing to then use to make it like this nigga is a monster. Because we know even in the end, when it really comes down to it, they'll do this to anybody. But the fact that they're doing this to us means that there's another agenda. And the agenda is get rid of most of these undeclared Moors before they can wake up and reconstitute their original government. If most of them is dead, if most of them is in jail, if we don't turn most of them gay, then that means that the ones that's left is going to be so minute that they won't be really in the conventional position to force us out. So that way they'll have their own shit, and then we can still rule over these other things. And they have the right to do that. They have the right to do that because the United States functions not under admiralty law. That's the condition of the United States. In order for them to focus and be under admiralty law in the first place, that means that they would have to extend the jurisdiction from the sea, meaning that they would have to take what the borderline of the coast was and move the inland water all the way in, right, through color of law. They are now under admiralty. Admiralty is what came out of their condition after 1812. They, from 1779, have been functioning under the law of necessity. Actually, 1782, I believe, since the law of based on the law of necessity. Meaning, when we walked out of the original, when the original several states walked out, I believe in 1860 or 1861, we constituted the real government. So there was no real government to convene. So in that, based on the law of necessity, they had to perpetuate the deal that we gave them, which was they now could function as a quasi-government so long as they gave respect and honor to us, the original constituency who put them in power. That's why you are not part, when you hear Moore saying that you part and parcel of the United States government, that's now cipher. You are not. Ask yourself this. Are you part and parcel of the preschool you put your child in to learn how to read? No. You only go up there to show your support, right, to come see them graduate, right, and do what they're supposed to do and be there. The only time you really convene or go in or have to go in when something happens to the child or there's some sort of discipline problem or something like that. So apply that same rationale to a country. Why would you, after you gave these people the right to have something for themselves, right, why would you then abandon your government that put them in power so that way they could be in yours, so that way you could be in theirs? Remember, the only way citizens can become citizens of the United States is if they have no titles of nobility. That specifically is about you and I as Moorish Americans or Moroccan Americans or Moors, period, or Asiatics. But that has to do with us specifically because we are the only ones, we are the first ones in history with the titles of nobility. We are the ones that brought the titles into Europa and everywhere else for these people to have something and to actually free. Okay? The Morisco amalgamated Castilian Aragon side, the ancient Roman side of our family, was always the ones that was raising the Neanderthals up and finding ways to genetically bring them back into the human family. But that wasn't how we all got down. That was just one side of us. That's why all of us had problems, because we have never reconciled what got us in the position in the first place. Everybody got all these theories as to why you all as messed up as you are, why you got all the diseases and everything else, why every time you turn on the TV and it's something to do with a black person, there's always some sort of minstrelsism or some crazy shit. And then even the so-called affluent, prominent ones or whatever, they don't respect themselves. They don't put them in situations of building up the rest of the community. They start to immediately embrace and open themselves up to everybody else because it no longer becomes a black thing. And nobody wants to be accused of pulling the race card. You understand the buzzwords that they've created to block you in and stifle your voice? So that way if you say anything about that, if you say anything about the obvious racism that you're obviously facing, that somehow or another you are not letting go, and you are not moving on, and you are not pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, right, and bringing yourself into balance and raise it, why is it that whenever something happens to you, that these people would rather be called anything in the world but a racist? I don't like being called minority. I don't like being called a non-person. I don't like being called African-American, black, Negro, colored, West Indian, or any of the other things that they call me. Everything but a child of God. Everything but my damn name. where you can even tell these crackers your name. You even show and prove who you are in terms of these crackers. They still want to find a way to get you to answer to a name that's not your own. So being no more none of that, it ain't nothing. Then why is it that you sweating me so much for these 2 or 3 little letters at the end of my shit? And then look at that. What the brother, let's look at the brother's father. Because I'm also looking at this in conjunction and in timing with all of these other things that were happening socially around the same time or right before the verdict, like the launching of the Magna Carta, right? Which is the Magna Carta Holy Grail, right? But that, again, is allegory. That's code. Those are 2 different aspects. The Magna Carta was set up to allow those European nobles to marry back into the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is a Sangreal bloodline that Dan Brown didn't create, that the guy who wrote the book Sacred Blood, Holy Grail, or whatever, created. These white men didn't create this. They are regurgitating stories about your nobility and how they were actually able to marry and bleed into your family and then bleach it out based upon our own people's issues with color, based upon us being separated genetically and grafted both willingly and unwillingly over the past 6,000 years. You have to understand, in 1928, when the Prophet received what he received and did what he did at Cuba, that was it. The United States was done. All of the fireside chats that FDR and all of that was trying to do, he reneged on all of that when he allowed them to set up the New Deal. Everybody did the League of Nations, but when you really look at the timing of what is called the League of Nations, as well as the so-called end of the war, you would see that the League of Nations was really the foment of what the Prophet was doing. Those were all of the countries that was trying to find a way to capitulate and come back and find a way to reestablish these Moorish nationals. Everything that the United States country is doing in contract on behalf of Spain, Britain, and France. You understand? Because those were the 3 powers that were working together for 10 years between the mid-1700s to the late 1700s, which then set up for the parameters for the establishment of the kingdoms and the empires of Spain and all of that. Because they all built on the backs of the original people that they turned into living trusts that they could then own, which then gave them the right to own the land, or to stay on the land through the land grant. Because they want you to believe that the Europeans came over here, that these Puritan pilgrims came over here, met the so-called Indians, other white people, right, red people, as they say, right, then got friends with the Indians, then took over the land from the Indians and started killing the Indians, when it really was totally different. It really was our cousins from over there chose to come over here. And because they was our cousins, some of us chose to allow them to take sides in beefs that we had with each other. And because our cousins and them was dealing with slaves, those Moors that started dealing with them started dealing with slaves. Started dealing with them or amalgamating them or dealing in trade names and all of that. And then that became the problem. And then as that became the problem, it began to get progressively worse. Because now everybody is caught up in the problems, and then that class, that first class of white Freemasons that was raised up, the Washingtons, the Jeffersons, the Adams, the Franklins, these people. They were entrusted based upon what they had become privy to, but also realized that they were still slaves themselves regardless, and they could not free themselves. The War of Independence only was successful because John Hanson Bay gave Washington all of that silver so he could buy shoes and more guns and arms from those Moors that lived and was doing business on the wharf, because the white boys could not leave the land because they was under the jurisdiction of the colonies and the plantations. That's why all of the Civil War, or what they call Revolutionary War fighting, happened on the East Coast in England. And so at the end of it, they have the capitulation at Cornwallis, where the United States agrees to pay George back all this money. If the United States won the war and they did it by themselves and all of that, why would they have to pay the loser? They didn't pay the loser. They was paying money that we gave them to get out of their original contracts and transfer their contractual ownership. The contractual ownership for the destruction of our country. Thereby turning all of our people into non-persons. Thereby allowing the so-called Prince Hall fraternity which was granted a certain degree of jurisdictional freedom from the original Chippewa Society, right? Original Native American free so-called Masonry, or Moorish Masonry, which is an oxymoron, which was basically Moorish culture, the science of the Apprentice Hall for the science of law and government in the form of signs and symbols. It became Freemasonry because the ones that were freed and accepted by those Moors sat at their feet and learned the ways of how to establish government. We just didn't just create the thing for them. They patterned this thing off of us. But after the capitulation of Cornwallis, they were now in a rock and a hard place. They got to come up with gold to pay this dude that they don't have, and then at the same time, they still got to acknowledge and look at us being free and having all the land, and they still owe us fealty. So they stepped to the ones or the members of us that was outside of our natural self and had abandoned their estates and agreed that if they came into the United States, they would receive gold for the labor that they was actually producing. So when they entered the United States, they had to give up their titles of nobility. So if you were Jabril Moorally, you became James Moore. You know what I'm saying? So this denationalization led to the abandonment of these estates. Now that the legislature of the United States was not fully considered and written down on paper yet, it was a position where it was like, okay, well, these words don't mean nothing on paper yet, so what we're going to do is list these things in all of the states of our union, which is laid on top of the original union of Moors, right? So there's the original union, the republic, and then over that is a thin film that we'll call the colorable United States, corporatocracy, that took its place. And so to perpetuate it, being that we were still meeting and still having our own thing at Philadelphia, it was split. The government had to be split, and so it was agreed that Washington would be where they could run shit, because that's where the Universal Apprentice Hall of the Science of Law and Government was housed anyway, in what was then referred to as the House of Burgess, where the Bergamoors was dropping the real knowledge on how to run the science of the universe with astronomy in terms of the isonomy. They took what little from that and then created, again, the Freemasonic societies based upon the G7 Lodge that was founded in England. And remember, England in the 1700s is the eastern seaboard of the United States, or what we call New England today. Not Albion over there. So the G7 Lodge that we talk about in England in terms of the real Orient that's over there now was the one that was created in the late 1800s. The original G7 Lodge charter came through the Prince Hall people after they absconded and took the Charter for African Lodge 459 in the ritual they call the Boston Tea Party. So like everything else, even in their ancient real Freemasonry lore and knowledge, all of that stuff, the real heavy lodges and stuff is over here. The old stuff over there that they be dealing with, their masonry is them. They deal more with magic and stuff like that because they coming from the Crowley position. But again, Crowley, in order for him to become the beast and become the Grand Master and eventually go in to create the Thelemic order, he had to be consecrated in Omexum. He was the anti-Noble Jew Ali. Because as a Templar, he had to sojourn and dwell within the Eastern Marches. There's the Eastern Marches, the Southern Marches, the Western Marches, and the Northern Marches. The Eastern Marches is the Templar jurisdiction over here. This is what the Moorish Orthodox Church is trying to function from, because they're all Templars through the Golden Dawn. The Golden Dawn and all of that had a lot of its original parishioners out of the Moorish Orthodox Church, especially people like Tim Leary and these people who were CIA and went on to create LSD and Molly's and everything else they're doing now. This is why the challenge, then, of jurisdiction almost becomes a moot point, because you have never really been in the jurisdiction of the United States. And because of the United States and the so-called Dred Scott decision, that has never been repealed. So that means, regardless of who or what they're doing in terms of civil rights, that has nothing to do with the fact that you can never be a citizen of the United States, because a non-person cannot be a citizen of the United States. Only persons can be that. And then construed in the aspect of the United States, that technically always means 14th Amendment citizens, which are corporations, or what is called human capital, listed under the UCC under the term human property improvements. So you cannot try, if you're a law official and you kill a so-called black person, that person has been labeled dead already. So you can't get them on murder. That's why the judge in the trial automatically said you can't say racial profiling, you can only say profiling. But everybody knows that it's racial profiling. Everybody knows that the cops is whipping and killing and planting drugs and raping and talking about eating people. But if in any way you object to being physically abused by one of these creatures of law, which is a real term for civil servants, then you are wrong. But of course you are. Because property cannot rebel against its master. And that's obvious just in how the United States functions, or is functioning right now. It kills its own citizens, burns them up, tortures them, use their name to go and do the same thing to other people all around the world. But the United States, for whatever reason, can do it. And that's because the people have not realized that they are alive. The people have been practicing the sin of omission. The sin of omission is based on the absence of the mistress or the mistress. What does all of this mean? When a Moor, you got a Moor walking down the street with a fez on. And right next to him, you got a brother with a Red Sox cap on, right? The APB goes out, and the Moor's in his habit, and the brother is just, dressed like a regular brother. And the APB goes out that they looking for somebody in a red hat. Yeah. No, it's not. No. It's not that. If the Moor's in his habit, meaning that he looks and is dressing like a Moor, doing his thing, walking down the street or whatever, and the brother next to him is talking with him, walking down the street, but he's dressed like a regular brother, baggy jeans, you know what I'm saying, baseball cap to the back, Dr. Dre, Beats by Dre's on or whatever, backpack doing his thing, walking down the street, and the APB go out that we looking for somebody with a red hat and a book bag. Who they going to stop? 5-0 run up, they're going to grab everybody? Not necessarily. Because I've seen it. I've been the Moor in this situation. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen it go down. And it's something about seeing somebody in their real habit. Now, this exception to every rule, and this don't say that the devil still won't be bestial in a crazy bestial situation or the wrong day. But I would say 8 out of 10 times, they're going to get the one that they feel that they can get more than the one that they're going to have to fight for. Because pigs are lazy. And the simplest aspect works. So those people that are in the situation, let's say pigs themselves, like people that have to be in that organization or feel that that's the only way they can pay their bills and stuff like that, there's going to come an aspect to you, especially if you raise it in your consciousness, that it's going to start to wear on your spirit what you're doing. But the thing is, you can't let on. Let me put you in a game. You can't let on to your people that you even see things in a manner like what we talking. You got to be the spook sap Bob during that situation because you cannot change the organization. When you look at that movie, he was not in the CIA to change how the CIA did business. He was in the CIA to learn how they did business so he could do his business. So unless you're doing that, and that's your purpose, which really ain't the purpose for most undeclared Moors, they just want to find a way to eat, feed their family, look at it like a job. But the job is destroying yourself. You understand? The job is creating a situation where you have to pray and kill your own people and unify with people who have taken oaths to kill you. Talking about the Irish and the other white and these other cops that come in there. So the time is coming where now that this Trayvon thing has happened, and the way and the manner that it has is that these things also happen to engender riots and stuff like that. So because the people haven't done it, this is now another aspect of their behavioral modification that they add to their think tank and their overall process in dealing with the undeclared and keeping them that way. the Jewish aspect of what has happened is that another young man has been murdered. Whether you say he was black or white or Moorish or whatever, he was still murdered by someone who shot somebody before and was accused of molesting his two nieces. An insane person, but you can see that by the closeness of his eyes that he's inbred. And you know that's how some of them get down. You know what I'm saying? They keep them chromosomes close because it breeds insanity in the family. And citizens of the United States have to be perpetually at odds with themselves and everything else. That's what makes them what we consider today American. They're totally mixed up. They don't know where or what they really think or believe. They developed a manner of speaking where they can express an opinion without having any emotion behind it by always speaking in an upward fashion. You have people from our hip-hop generation, understand, who are so into this what they call American culture or Americana, that they have no idea how to carry a conversation outside of anything dealing in entertainment. I was watching this show on this thing with Will.i.am, and he said it's going to be ill. He said in 20 years, based on the educational system and how it works out here, my 6-year-old niece, based upon how they're trying to educate her now, will be less advanced than the iPhone that will be out in 20 years. So 20 years from now, the iPhone will be smarter. My niece. Yeah. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of the dumbing down of humanity in a whole. And it happened based upon people sinning against themselves, based upon not relating to who and where they are. So when we acknowledge the fact that the reason why the man is preyed on in his family and is set outside his family is due to perpetuate the myth that he is somehow less of a man, and to pervert the original agreement between the man and his house, which is a sacred trust, a family trust endowed by God, which then puts it under or puts trust law or real law into ecclesiastical jurisdiction. So what the United States do to get around that is to acknowledge that they can't legislate on religion. All they can do is acknowledge and enforce your right to practice whatever it is. So in the practice of it, go back to me. In the practice of it is more important than the actual substance of it. That is totally against everybody's real culture on earth, because nobody wants to give their energy to something that they feel is futile. And it seems in the United States, the more you try to do good, the more you're put in a position to have to be bad, to do good. You see? This is not an indigenous aspect of humanity. This was a concept of humanity that was germinated in a specific section of humanity, and that was in what we call Europa, or so-called Europe for the vulgar. And because they had a feudal system based on fiefdoms, they created a perpetual system of war that established an overall dominion of the area that they were charged with. So when we talk about the Moravians, the Hessians, the Huguenots, the Danes, the Danars, the Scots, the Dubs, the Dubglasses, the Duns, the Albigensians, the Cathars, all of these people are Moors. The people that lived under them, under the kings of Denmark and the kings of York and all of that, those were the indentured servants of the Moors and the bastard children of the Moors, or the so-called confiscated Peregrines Albinus Gauls of the Moors, the slaves of the Moors, imported from Slovenia or Slovakia by way of Georgia. The Georgians, out of the that gave birth to the so-called, that came out of the ancient kingdom of Bactria, founded by Clitus of Niger, who was one of the generals of Alexander the Macedonian, who was in league with Carthage. Carthage being Phoenicia, Phoenicia being the conquistador of ancient Rome. So we all have all of this blood in us right now, because all of that stuff that we read about that happened over there happened over here. But to access that and to import that into our present consciousness, we have to first get past the original, the artificial matrix that has been supplanted over our pineal organ, which is we are citizens of the United States that were brought and imported into this country as African slaves. And we were. But the African slave that was imported was, one, also a prisoner of war, and two, undeclared Moor redesignated as Negro and chattel property in the United States. In the United States at that time, in 1774 to 1779, there was no United States. Therefore, that happened in the 13 colonies that at the time was England. And because these was our cousins and these people at the top that they was dealing with, they had to deal with us, who were already going through an internal fight from having to deal with those of us that were bringing those foreign wars from abroad home, which we had to now clean up and pay for. So we created an Article of Confederation to confederate ourselves around one tree, God, and then accept our free national name as the acceptance of that. So the sin that was committed by the Moors who chose not to come back into the constitutional fold was the sin of omission. The sin of omission shall condemn many to hell, be they laymen or hierarchy. I repeat, not the sin of commission, but the sin of omission will commit many to hell. Among them there will be also mitres. What does mitre mean? M-I-T-R-E. Mitre is Greek, which is Etruscan or Minoan, for the word headband or turban, also spelled mitre. It is a type of headgear or headdress now known as the traditional ceremonial headdress of the bishops and certain abbots in the Roman Catholic Church, as well as the Anglican Communion, some of the Lutheran churches, and also bishops and certain other clergy in the Eastern Orthodox churches, the Eastern Catholic churches, or the Oriental Orthodox churches in the Eastern Marches. So what that is saying is that my point of saying that when the Moor is walking down the street in his own headgear, he is known as a Moor. People don't see him as just a Negro. Even if they don't know what it is, they don't really see Moors wear that. You'll see them wearing everything else but that. That's great, King. So this becomes a system in which you are identified nationally by what your crown appears publicly. So the sin of omission that was committed was the sin of not tying yourself to your ancient headdress, because that headdress has nothing to do with the modern perception of what fezzes or turbans are. So much so that the enemy, after taking control of these ancient systems of reliquary and worship, started to adorn themselves in the same headgear that they now outlawed you for wearing, which then perfects the point of omission or omitting the aspect of yourself that represents who you are in the public sphere. Would Trayvon had been killed if he had been wearing a fez? Would Trayvon had been killed either way if he was wearing a turban? Would he have been killed if he was not him and was somebody else that day? Or was this person so insane that he was dead upon killing somebody who fit the description of what he perceived the threat, the nature of the threat? And the nature of the threat in the United States perpetually is the black male, because he is the exact remnant of the estate based upon the domicile of origin. The founding fathers, the planters of the United States, were and are and continue to be of Moorish ancestry. And their contribution to the country was totally washed and wiped away, and the remnants of us and them became listed as non-persons and chattel and other things. And an enforced traumatic 85 years of chattel trauma was inundated into the mass of people that are called black in this country, to then change the complexion of what the world used to see the old America prior to 1779. So by the time the new consuls of the United States were going now to represent the original government of the Articles of Confederation that was now in recess to settle our own differences, they now were starting to create capitulation agreements based upon our full faith and credit, speaking on our behalf. And then gradually, based upon the propaganda that was spread about us abroad and what we were over here, they changed and created the whole myth of the so-called Indian by the late 1800s. And then after Wounded Knee killed all of the remnants of that, where now the term Indian, again, means a Native American. A Native American is somebody who is basically a descendant from one of the Tartars, Hushen and them, that came over here way back in like 862 BC, who then mixed with the Olmecs and then created, mixed with the Olmecs as well as those Moors from Mali and India, which was Southeast Asia, who then after the destruction of that society left here and took the monsoon wind over into Southeast Asia and created the whole Khmer and Borobudur and all of that over there in what became Philippines, Laos, southern India, the Jawa people, and the Dravidian people, as well as the Tamils. All of those are Moors, Asiatics. So, does it make it any more poignant then that this young brother then has to be put, and his family then has to be put into the service in which people now perceive the situation hopeless. Like they don't even care. And the so-called person that they called the president, who was really the administrative president of the presidency of the United States, the president of the administrative office of the presidency of the United States of America. So as the acting bureaucrat, he can't even comment in fully whether he believes anything or not about the situation. I mean, this is the guy who had beers with the cop that came in and beat the hell out of their own boule, Henry Gates. The cop's name, coincidentally, in that incident, was named Crowley. You see? So the sin of omission is the sin of not being in your mind, not having your crown correct. He can tell by how you wear your hair, how you talk, the inflection, where your eyes go. These people study you. Why do you think they adopting all these black babies? They trying to figure out how to deal with you in the future because there's going to be so much more of us than them. It's going to be incredible. And it's going to be those type of children that plead for people in the real world to not take these people out. Because the wages of sin, the pendulum swing both ways. 2 deaths. You got the boy who got shot in the back, then you got their own white boy who they killed in Canada. From the CIA show, from the Glee show. All in celebration. 3 deaths. You get a trifecta. But he was on drugs. But look how they explain it away. It's all good. It wasn't no conspiracy. Trayvon was smoking weed, and this Glee guy was on drugs, and this 11-year-old kid stole a truck. You know? So what? They got what they deserve, right? That's what you basically say when you acquit them. That's what you basically say when you're saying that none of this was racially motivated. But they don't want you to get into the motivation of race behind what they do because that's going to lead you right back to your original self. But a lot of us don't want to take it back to that level either. Because then that means we got to do something. That means niggas got to wake up and create a calendar and figure out how the money is going to go here and how the aid is going to go here and this and that. The niggas don't want to do that. And the operative word is niggas don't want to do that. Therefore, if niggas don't want to do it, then who's going to do it? The rosters can't do it. They can provide the spiritual aspect, the agricultural aspect, but they can't do it by themselves because there's mysteries of the Selassie system that they have not yet come into knowledge to, and its connection to the Maroons and why he had to be chosen more than the indigenous Maroon system that had already been functioning, Maroons having a red flag, being related to the Moors. But we don't want to get into all of that. We just want to get into the music and the weed and the daggering and all the other, pirating and JLP and PNP and all of that crap. That's what they want the people over there to get caught up in. So that's what they caught up in. So people that will offer you nothing will seem like they have everything in the world, that everybody in the world is supporting them. And that's part of the program, because the people are easily led by flash and shiny things and the promise and delusions of grandeur. These are aspects of society that have become the norm in so-called Americana or American popular culture, that has become a mass hypnosis that has annexed a demonic force amongst the so-called American psyche that at any time could just explode into some other shit. Nowhere else in the world is that going on. And you got places in the world where they got tanks on the street every day. People are poor, but they poor because the United States is running everything on nothing. And it's reached the point where it cannot do it. And the only people that could bail it out was the only people who got it. Again, the Rastas didn't get the mandate, the deed of conveyance back from the Sultan of Saudi Arabia and Morocco. The Rastas didn't get that. The Mormons didn't get that. You know what I'm saying? The Panthers didn't get that. The NOI and none of these niggas got that. They got money, they got notoriety, but they didn't get that. Why not? Because the scientists, most of them came out of the Moorish Science Temple. In some way, you cannot come into black consciousness in this post-millennium future without coming in contact with a Moor now. You can't. You got people claiming that don't even really understand. You understand? Because there's a vibration of truth in it. Because we are the only de jure people on the planet. We are the only people who could perpetually live in our true self in the fiction and outside the fiction without being so-called sovereign in it. You can't be more sovereign than the Creator. You can't be more sovereign than Allah. You can't be more sovereign than Allah. You can't be your own father. You can't be your own mother. You understand what I'm saying? You could raise yourself, but you can't suckle yourself. That's masturbation. Which is a part of human anatomy too, and a part of the function of being human. Because you are a living furnace. You are a living combustible furnace of immense, immeasurable proto-hydronuclear energy that's constantly flowing positive and negative magnetic ionic rays that are bounced back to you through the ionosphere and amplified to the UV magnification through your melanin, through your pineal organ, through your hypothalamus and endocrine system that activates you every time you take a breath. Between one of your breaths is a lifetime to some people. Within every third breath you take, somebody has entered and left the planet. So it ain't no coincidence. That's a whole thing with Cheney getting Trayvon's heart and all of that came out. And as extreme and crazy and gruesome as something like that is, it's not surprising. I've seen movies where they've talked about nurseries, or what they call rookery, where they got senators who grow babies, have babies with prostitutes, grow babies, and put them in incubators and stuff, and just in case something happens to them, they can cut the heart or the organ out the baby and give it to the senator or whoever. That is the satanic side of the Templar shit, which is really the fake shit. The real Templars of the Eastern Marches are Moors, or study Moorish science. These are the true Shriners, the ones that wears the derby. Those are the young Turks. So the sin of not having one's headdress means that one head is not covered. How did they get Hiram? They hit Hiram lastly in the head. How did they get Rodney King? They hit him in the head. How did they get Yusuf Hawkins? They hit him in the head. They yoked him. The hood that you see Trayvon wearing is a Moorish, it's not called a hoodie. That's what Moors in the hood, young Moors in the hood called it, and white people trademarked and then started using in their vernacular to then mark it as their language, which we know as hip-hop. They mimic, they imitate. They don't innovate. They don't make nothing that's so new that you like, oh, nah. Our last people to do something like that was the Beastie Boys. And they were Jews. You know what I'm saying? So, and for those people that are like, oh, well, Jews are white people, yes, they are. But the difference between Jews and other white people is that Jews adopted a system of religious practice that got them out of the caves and the Neanderthal system quicker, and then were put in a position to export and ransom other importees, slaves, white people, who were not as civilized as them, who later became known as Gentiles or Protestants. So they were seen as the original house niggas of humanity. And so when Hitler got in a position to take the revenge on them in the name of the white race, this was all an inbred retaliation, because Hitler himself came from Jewish stock, being the illegitimate son of the Liechtenstein, which again is Rothschild, which again is ancient Bavarian going back to Henry V, which again is Moorish. So because the Germans through the Holy Roman Empire was down with the Almoravian Empire, they hated on us, because it was the German kings, the German Moors of the Holy Roman Empire that took the throne of England during the Hanoverian period. And in the Hanoverian period, there was a king, George whatever, who had two Moors with him, Mustafa and Muhammad. And nobody could get at the king in the court but through them, because he only spoke German. So he could only translate for them. And the language of the court was either French or English. Which shows you that it wasn't about the specific nationality of the people that the Moors was ruling over. They just moved one king from one duchy to another, because it was one family. You know what I'm saying? So we all related to that. That's why we got English names, because we were part of the English court during the transition of the Articles of Confederation, because we wasn't at war with him. That's why we had a treaty with him. That's why he could make a treaty with the Sultan of Morocco for us, the Alamarcanos. But if our Alamarcanos had died without somebody to establish the estate, or his estate was abandoned, it was supposed to go back to the Societas Republicanas Marrocanos. The only way that could be tabulated was through the name. And because the name had been ordained through the foundation of our government, the Isonomy, to say that there had to be a spiritual, unlimited attachment to it as an estate ordained on earth by God as it is in heaven, the name had to carry the weight of that. But because there was no one to take the estate, or the Moor was undeclared and now put into an inferior state as a Negro, a dreaded Scot, right? Dread meaning awe or to fear, and Scot meaning Scotch law or old Scotsman, which represents the Moors of Scotia, which brings us back to ancient Kemet or Egypt under the rule of Sesostris II, who sent an expedition of the Colchians to to search for the so-called Phrixus, which became known in the so-called Western myth as Jason and the Argonauts. This is all Moorish history, about Moorish navigation. But because they call it Greek, you feel it don't have nothing to do with you. But because everything was put on the Greeks as the indigenous descendants of the Minoans and the Cretians and them from over there, they had to start the end of their so-called New World Order over there with the so-called destruction of the Greek economy. This is all related to the old empire. So who went to bail out the Greeks? The Germans. Why? Because ancient Germans, yeah, they're going to get the money and they'll get the tax breaks and they can set up stuff in Greece or whatever. But more than that, it's ancient treaty law. This is treaty series law. These two countries, so you're dealing with treaties. So it goes back to ancient treaty. So the old ancient treaty between the old Holy Roman Empire extended to Cyprus and the dominions beyond the sea. So the United States figured I could kill two birds with one stone. Germany got all the money now. So if I get them to get caught up with Greece, I can then move on Libya, another part of the old empire, and destabilize that. Because I know that Germany still got good dealings with Russia, China, and them. So they'll try to broker deals with them while I'm over there and then start trouble in Syria. See what I'm saying? Because the goal is to finally knock these two countries out to stabilize them enough so that way we can go into Iran. So what is this dude petitioning for? Gay rights. So you got the ritualistic killing of 3 different so-called American citizens, 2 black, 1 white. But because, again, Trayvon, who was wearing a burnous at the time of his mortem, was in his native habit. So he shouldn't have been, if we're going by ritual now, I'm not talking about him, and I'm not trying to be insensitive to his death. I'm just talking about him as a subject of a lesson that we all need to learn, or what I'm striving to divine from it. And what I'm seeing is that him wearing a burnous meant that he was in his natural habit, even though he was going to the rainbow, which was the Skittles, you know what I'm saying? And he wasn't really aware of his bearing, obviously, for whatever reason. But being that he was killed or murdered, right, where was the sin of omission? The sin of omission that can't be with him, it would have to be with the line before him, which would be the father. So then when I started looking online and started seeing his pops and all of this Freemasonic gear, I started seeing, oh, then I saw him with the Shrine of Fez, green Shrine of Fez with the writing on it. The green joint with the writing on it means that you're active in the faith. Green headgear represents you active in the faith of whatever the faith you in. So the faith he in obviously was Freemasonry. So the fact that he was wearing a Shrine of Fez with the writing on it, with the green on it, meant that he was active in whatever he was in. And we know that Freemasons deal with ritual. So the sin of the father then is not, just like you know about Freemasonry, you got to know about the Moor. So it's a choice. See what I'm saying? It's a choice to be Moorish or Scottish, as they say. When I say Scottish, I'm talking about this crazy, crowdy Scottish right stuff they're doing now. Because this stuff is what's playing out in real life. So, yeah, it don't mean nothing, but it do. Because right after that, this dude Cheney wound up getting better. He was on the deathbed the day before. Right after the Trayvon shooting, the next day he was good. It's like he received a new heart from a mysterious donor. I'm like, okay. And so to celebrate, you know, they do the ritual with the young god. So this, in terms of what I'm saying, is really an allegory to, let it be an allegory to showing you how being active and having faith in something you don't really understand can really come back and turn into some whole other shit that have nothing to do with what you may have thought you may have been a part of. You don't know what ancestral curses and things like that do, because we as black people don't realize the war that we came out of. Forget the war with the white man. That came at the very end. The war that started with us went all the way back between, again, Carthage and Rome. And it got to the point where the people who were calling themselves Romans started doing some whole new shit. And you don't really see that now. Like when you see the color revolution in Egypt, it's not like the people that's fighting the revolution is flying a different flag. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they a whole different people trying to take over this country and now turn it into something else. They're not trying to do that. They're trying to reestablish the government that's already corrupted, that's been corrupt since they made the deal with Israel, which again is the unofficial 53rd state of the United States. So the commitment to Israel really is the commitment to the dark side of the Moorish Zionist temple, which was founded by Rabbi Wentworth in 28 in Harlem. You know what I'm saying? So all of that is tied up in why we, the so-called black males of North Central South America, are preyed upon so heavily, because we represent the original constituency of what was or is the original republic or Great Seal Republic of the so-called United States, the original descendants of the tribe of Manasseh. It's us. It's nobody else. You could bring any picture of anybody else and whatever you tell me, it's not you. It's us. It's us. But when I say it's us, it's those people who realize that what Moorish Science or the Moorish Science Temple really is an access way through the Moorish Divine National Movement to the Al-Moroccan Empire and then to the Societas Republicae Americanos Estados, the original 48-state flag with the 6-pointed stars in a row. The United States of America in General Congress assembled. It's us. That's why they don't like you. That's why they hate you. They don't like the ancient Moroccans, the Al-Moroccans. That's who you are. And it's crazy, but all of the other designations that you've known to be are representations of, all summed up into one word, Moor. That's why they don't like you. So when you say ancient Ethiopian, Moor. When you say ancient Sumerian, Moor. When you say Elamite, Moor. When you say Macedonian, Moor. When you say whatever. When you say ancient Algonquin, Moor. When you say Haudenosaunee, Moor. When you say Sharatagi, Moor. When you're talking about Punic, Moor. You're talking about Peloponnesian Moors. That's who they are. Some were copper-skinned. Some were very, very dark-skinned. But essentially they were all Moors. And the turn happened to rise out of the Carthaginian system through the Roman system. That's why we have English names, because we descend from ancient Rome and Carthage through the line and series of York. That means that you as a Moor have the blood of Hadrian, Septimius Severus, and what's his name? Hadrian, Septimius Severus, and it's another dude. But anyway, that line has always been and will always be over here. And for the past 150 years, we've had a leech on us for the past time that has convinced us that the history that we know through him is and has been our only history. And that when we see black people in other places, they were educated the same way. That was the colonial system. That was to infect the colon of the original body politic, the religious body politic, and corporate that then had broken up into what we now know in African American studies as the diaspora. when people knew not where they came. This was the dispersion in the 40 years or what we call 400 years of not knowing who we are or where we originally come from. It started happening way back. It culminated in 1774 when we set down how it was going to go down, and then that was that. But because that was that and we adjourned and we resolved that, there was no way for any of us then to come back and then change it. That's why the Confederation was never amended. Therefore, it's perpetual. Therefore, it was in effect at the time of chattel slavery. Therefore, we were under the illusion that we were somehow outside of our original government based upon the contract that we signed. That then we signed in the 13th colony that was now redesignated as New England or England, an angled or anglicized land, an angled land that was then imported imported to it as an African, as an enslaved African. Then put chains around my neck and then had to then throw me on a boat on the Mississippi that's now listed as the Atlantic Ocean. That then brings me into America in what we call the Mississippi or the Louisiana. The Louisiana Purchase or the Port of Louisiana. So this system, again, went on for 85 years, which was long enough to instill a certain idea of what it was. So by the time of the Civil War, everything could then be destroyed. So everything, how it really looked, was already destroyed by the time our great-great-great-great-grandmothers was born. So because they was now by this time had abandoned their own estates or had no knowledge that they had an estate, were now raised on a plantation that they used to own, but now, based on the generation before them, they were now under the understanding that they were now slaves to it. So then any new people that came in was then inducted into the same education, instilled by the character playing Stephen and Django, and then instilled by the so-called white man, but then overseen by the black man, who is now has to do this in order to have some sort of property and maintain in this society, because he's given up his house and his titled nobility to turn it into an annexed plantation to help the United States make money against his original government, and is now watching the induction of his ancient constituency and his own people being brought in under the illusion now of who and what they really are. So the ones who really knew who they were, they either got really killed or let in on a secret, and then they became house niggas and shit like that too. This is the class that spawned the boule, the bourgeoisie, the so-called present-day black fraternal Freemasonship, and everything like that. Not because I say it is or I made it up or it's a story that I made up. This is just something I'm putting together and relaying to the people based upon the research and the data as it appears. There's man books you can get on it, like how Wall Street created a country, how they created the country of Panama, the Naked Capitalist, Secrets of the Temple. What's another one? Psychic War, Dictatorship USA. The Montauk Papers. Any Freedom of Information Act you can get on Operation MK Naomi or MK Ultra. And anything that you can get on the Zero Project. These are all ongoing systems that have been shut down and reorganized and have become movie fodder for us to look at as entertainment, when it's really just a different way of recycling the truth to you and making money from it. So to be in the United States, you have to be commercial. Therefore, if you have a title of nobility, you no longer exist in the United States, because you're not dealing in commercialism, you're dealing in the realm of monarchism and a state. Therefore, you are equal and above the so-called United States government, which was contracted coincidentally, by your government to hold everything instead while you reorganize your situation. So all we really had to do was repatriate ourselves back to our original state and then reconstitute the Confederation and then have an association and then ratify the new Confederation and then ratify the Constitution as Moors openly, as opposed to having, because we didn't have to write it down, Moors this, Moors that back then per se, because we were already established in our own right. And it was already known that the term Moor and all of that really derived from those of us that was over here. Granada and Andalusia and all that was so marvelous and all that because that was a manifestation of something that manifested for Moors from over here and Africa. We built that together. That was the fruition of what we made from the Almoroccan Empire. And then through that, we were able to marry into the greater nobility of Europe and seal the deal between the Battle of Tours that was set up between the Moors and Charlemagne. So this so-called Magna Carta that came out on 12/15 is interesting because the real verdict was already rendered on the 12th at 6 o'clock. But it was let out on the 13th. But due to knowledge, 1 and 5 is 6. So the original Magna Carta that came out in 1215 A.D. is interesting because, again, on the 12th at 6 o'clock, which is 1 and 5 makes 6, again, 1215, manifests the independence of what you will have to divine the meaning out of the correspondence to why now and what does that mean for everybody else. But this is how they speak to you. It's like a video game. And so you have to know who you are and where you stand in it so that way you don't fall victim to the situation where you abandon your state. Because once you abandon your state, you fall into the United States. So the United States is always around you, and you're never in it until you're in a situation where you have to confront somebody that is in it. You see? That's the only time that you exist in the United States. But because you're the only de jure person on the planet, the only original people that can be on the planet, they are using your name to perpetuate their business. So their business is imperialism. Their propaganda method is Americana, pop culture, luxury, submission. Therefore, if you understand the operating tactics of the game, you know that there's aspects of the game that has a rule and an operating system and someone who actually set the game in motion. It was not a Caucasian person because Caucasian does not mean white. Therefore, the people who call themselves or think they are so-called W-H-I-T white, any person that you walk down, hey, how are you? What do you consider yourself? They never say white American. They either say white or American or, Dutch mixed with this or whatever, right? But the ones who say white, those are the ones who have no real knowledge but have assumed the superior position of the status that comes with the word. But as a Moor, you understand that there is a mirror aspect of the word. There is the W-H-I-T-E and the W-I-G-H-T-E. And because we don't understand that words are spells, we don't understand how one word can be transfixed into another and be reconstructed and reorganized into a new fashion, such as, oh, damn, she's fat, right? That could mean she's obese, or it could mean that she's beautiful. See what I'm saying? Yo, that's dope. That could mean literally, yo, that's dope right there, right? Or like, yo, that's dope right there. That could literally mean, yo, that's heroin or dope right there. I like how that looks. You see what I'm saying? We created that. Only the people who create something can change the meaning of it. You dig? Therefore, the word Negro was not created by you. That was something that came out of a species of property that had came to be known as that, and then was raised up into a status that was then perpetually reigned on by members of a so-called society that was engendered of white males, the Union Society of States, that would agree to perpetually miseducate and prey upon those that they were entrusted to protect. The Knights of the Golden Circle, who would be betrothed to find the original treasures, as they believed that they were Templars, the original treasures that were buried and hidden by the Moors and the Barbaries when they lost the Battle of Lake Erie after 1885. This is black history, but it ain't. You see what I'm saying? This is Moorish history. That's why you won't hear about it in Black History Month unless a real Moor is kicking it. But most Moors are not dealing with their true history and law. They're dealing with how to get out of things and repel things. The highest maximum of law is ecclesiastical. Therefore, if one has been noted in the public record to be within the ecclesiastical district at all times, one cannot be subject to any fines other than if one did not have a title of nobility. Because you also have a title of nobility that's added to your religious, body, politic, and corporate, you are the only one that can be in your true noble title. You are the only one that can own everything and own nothing, and be in harmony with it, and not have to create usury or commercialism to maintain it. But we don't believe we can, because we all in the strip club, and we all, bugging out and letting these murders go down while, and when I say we, I'm talking about white people too. I'm talking about y'all that think y'all white. You dig? Like today, there was a situation where some guy came and he started to tell me what I had to do, why I had to do this, why I had to do that, right at my door, just going in, banging on the door, then going in on me. And I said, okay, cool, that's all good. Well, you need to come, and while you're here, I can tell you to do this. Oh, well, I don't do none of that. You got to call them, and they got to do this. I just came to tell you this, blah, blah, blah. I'm just a messenger. I was like, yo, you really, so I went off on dude. And in the aspect of it, I was winning so hard that he, literally started screaming, right? So I started raising my octave, and instead of saying what I was saying, I just stopped to say, you can't talk louder than me. You can't talk louder than me. And where I'm talking, it's like a courtyard, so it was echoing on this dude. So I'm just seeing it just crystallize in his head, so he just got to bounce. So then so I'm still heated, so I'm going in, and then I realized this is the aspect, this is the aftermath of what I'm saying, of not only the retrograde. This whole thing went down on the retrograde, this Trayvon thing, but this so-called miscommunication, or the feeling that you can just come down and just come to somebody's house and just go in on them about how they living and all of that. All of that is erroneous. And, they always submit. But the thing is, don't think that in accepting who you are, they just going to let you, or, feel like you could just do that, even though you can't. But the minute you add ill and beg correctly to how you're supposed to rock and accept who you are in terms of your free nationalship, you have stepped through the looking glass and are now on the opposite side. You just don't realize it. You're in a whole different bracket now. But everything looked the same. But now you got to be the same. and the unification of who you are is really who you are. So you can have all the names you want, but when it comes to what you're dealing with in terms of your free national self and what you need to accomplish in that aspect, it has to be one and the same in order for you to benefit for what was left for you. Not because I want you to be this, but because this is what was left for all of us. For free, really. But the zakat comes in the maintaining of it, because as we have discussed, when you could take, as a black person, take African studies as a course in school, you can't do that now if you're black. You can only do that if you're black. You get a white teacher to teach you. If you white, you get a black teacher to teach you. But you can't be black and take African studies because they said that you already black. So you can't really do that. So in that instance, you're still getting your colonial education, and you're still getting degrees in it, and it's still rewarding you for it, but it still doesn't protect you from anything. In fact, it makes you even more victim, because you now really believe this shit. You really believe that it's really going to work, that they don't want you to go to jail. They don't want you to fail, that it's about succeeding. So as the father, the sins of the father are reflected in the child, is then manifested in the form of this person going through, whose son was in the eastern marches, in the western marches, was now, in the southern marches, was now sacrificed due to his lack of his mentor. He'd rather wear the other one. But the other one does not lead to the salvation that is led. It leads to the opposite. And as we see, the wages of sin have their own reward. And to celebrate this, these devils have created a musical theater of imagery that then reflects that. With this whole parade of Grecian and devil and Magna Carta and Catholicism and Golden Dawn imagery, which is the cover of the Jay-Z album, the cover of the J. Cole album, the Magna Carta that's on the inside of that, the image of the Magna Carta with the whole cross and the sun in the middle, and then that of the Kanye piece with the seven stripes down the middle. This creates a pattern, like I said, in which the music is meant to reflect the aspect. So, like I said, the burnous or the hoodie, you know what I mean, has the dual meaning in the sense of the burned noose that was put around the neck of the strange fruit that was left to hang from the sycamore tree. They can't stop what they're doing until somebody stops them. The federal government is not going to do it because it has operations against us as well. But at the same time, they're also bound to do it and protect those who have already shown and proven who and what they are without all of the hoopla and all of the crap that you see that's going down. The real ones that's putting it down ain't the ones that's on TV and all of that. The ones that's on TV, other than certain elders that I've seen, I only seen one when they spoke to the elder, where they try to speak to the IRS. And the IRS is like, we can't comment on organizations that don't pay us tax. Click. So the federal government already know. The agencies of the federal government already know. But the original constituency has not presented itself in the proper fashion. Therefore, it's not going to be recognized in a fashion that's credible for us to receive and get what we need in terms of our position. but the object is not gaining some sort of position within their governmental structure or having their governmental structure in some way give you anything. They are bound to do this based upon their treaty series that was entered into under 244-2, where they have to acknowledge the Alamada Columns for what he has contributed and she has contributed. So we're talking about matters of jurisprudence and law, positive law, that is on a consulary level that has nothing to do with state or trivialities like politics and all that. That's why when you're rolling for real, you get that which you need to get around. Unless you got your own thing popping where you know it's cool and everything is set up where they already know that you outside in the outline jurisdiction, all that, then you can flip your license plate and all that. But even before you do that, you need to get it in writing from the head of the head, the governor, that you're doing all of that. So that way all of that is well and good, and he'll do it, and she'll do it. Regardless of all of the Illuminati shit that you think and all of that is going down. Something else is really going down. What's really going down is that they are hemorrhaging money. They're hemorrhaging money. You understand? Every day, out of the window. The Iraq thing blew up in their face. Everybody getting Iraq money. They can't stop it. It's a run on foreign currency, and nobody's trying to mess with the U.S. because the U.S. ain't bent for nothing but credit. All it got is credit and guns. That's all the U.S. got. Credit, guns, and niggas hostage. That's it. But the niggas is willing hostages. Because the secret is they was never niggas at all. The niggas are the ones that started calling them niggas. The Nagars was the ones that were smart enough to leave. The ground of jurisdiction most generally adopted by the courts of law in Scotland is afforded by rule. The actor, which is the sequitur fortum rent. The jurisdiction. The jurisdiction is determined by the defender's relation to the territory. That relation may be the following kind: domicile, residence, resort for business, actual presence. Origin, including nationality or quasi-allegiance implied in the term Scotchman. So a Scotsman or Scot means nationality. So if you put the word dread in front of Scot, you get the fear, again, of nationality, which is what Dred Scott was really about, and what resulted in their Northwest Ordinance and their ability to set this fake system up in the West. But everybody wanted to get their cut. So if you got arrested in the East Coast, Upper East Coast, you're getting arrested in England, getting a cut of that farm. England representing the 13 colonies, which really is the Virginia Tobacco Company that they came back and seized during the War of 1812, which then destroyed their government because they didn't have the gold to pay back Britain that was loaned to us because they had thrown us in jail. They had started selling us, and a lot of us didn't tell them where we hid and put a lot of the gold and all of that. That's when the treasure hunting started. That's what started the Knights of the Golden Circle and the KKK. It's about money and using people to find money and property, using niggas like budos, like mules. Like mules. You know what I'm saying? And it's still going on. As the dwelling place which a man chooses a fixed abode for himself and his family. That means that you somewhere by your choice. You are now under somebody's jurisdiction. reading something on Facebook where people was talking about Jay-Z with the chain on and all of that. Like, that's cool that he'll acknowledge, his heritage when he's back in Brooklyn and all of that, but he'll wear it around all of them people because they ain't going to step to him and be like, yo, peace, God, what's today's math? David Rockefeller and Gwyneth Paltrow ain't going to ask him none of that. They don't know about none of that. So it's all good. Them people that's around him, them sycophants, Swiss beef, they're not going to ask him about none of that. They're going to be like, word, you be building now? You know what I'm saying? Like, they can't get no outside consciousness other than listening to people like us. But you got so many fans amongst the conscious people that it's like, come on, man. These people is not trying to, all they're going to do is steal your material, man. They ain't going to try to put you on like that. They not that type of people. And, I be hoping people be proving me wrong, son. Like, people was really coming to me like, nah, man, they're going to really flip the Trayvon thing because it's going to be working, it's going to be retrograde and all of that. I'm like, yeah, I hear you, but nah, this dude getting off. But when they shot him, we were saying that because this is part of their thing. This is how they keep the country, the interest in the country going. This is how they show the people in the world that they still got the Moors under control. Was they going to do nothing? And when I say Moors, I'm talking about the undeclared because these are the ones who are willing United States citizens. These are the niggas who you could tell about your culture. And you know what they do? They stop talking to us. They'll stop talking to us. But then when they be in a cipher with somebody else and they start talking about it, then they start talking about shit they heard from us. That's how niggas really do. That's how black people do. That's why these little kids is talking about, no, I don't want to be black. It ain't your color, sweetie. It's not your color. It's the status. Nobody wants that status. Nobody wants the status of death and muddiness and being shot at the women, always being under stress and under trauma. Nobody want to live like that. But you live like that when you black. You do. You live like that. You never know. You know what I'm saying? White people don't live like that. They comfortable. Like today. He's the guy who came over with the messenger, he was like, yeah, well, your neighbors said this. I said, who? What neighbors? Who? These niggas? These drunks? These drunks who leave dog crap all over the league, who broke the gate and crap in the pool and do all crazy type of shit? These niggas complaining about a bird feeder? Nature? I was like, who? He's like, no, well, I can't tell. I said, see, you want some high school shit. This is some high school shit. Well, you the messenger, right? Give them the message. Tell them I said to jump into the canal, man. I'm not fucking doing nothing. I'm not taking down none of that. Well, I'm just telling. Well, just tell them. And this is what I mean. The day after Trayvon, white man, get rid of nature. You know what I'm saying? Useless. These are the people they talk about as useless eaters. People see me every day. See them more every day. Hi, more, all of this. We're gonna tell this nigga, gonna tell management about a bird feeder? You lucky I don't put 2 out there. That's part of my religion, nigga. Now what? I done nationalized the birdhouse. You see the flag on it. What you gonna say? I'm not? And this is what I mean, man. This is what I'm talking about. These are the things that people like us should not have to deal with. But we deal with it because we live in a system where people have been purposely taught to be ungodly and to do things that are arbitrarily obtrusive. So, again, to me, in all of this, the lesson to be learned is the fact that when you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas, man. And you cannot entrust the lives of your children to people that you would not, in company, be in your so-called natural habit. Because a Shriner is not to wear a true Shriner is not to wear his fez in the company of anybody that he would not introduce his mother, his daughter, his grandmother, or his wife to. And that's usually everybody in the lodge. That's why they can't wear it outside. But you as a Moor are doing it because you are a noble and have always been. So you in the light, they in the dark. The shrine of them was supposed to be the gateway into moral science. That's what the prophet came and said that he was there to take all that stuff off for. So all of that, Freemasonry is just about symbolism and brotherhood and all that. Like, all of that is cool, man. But if you are Moor, you already born right. You already born on the square. It's about delving deep within yourself to do that. It's not delving deep within it in a system by which that you have already come to understand to be that. You are the symbol. You are the degree. You are Moral Science Temple. We are that. Nobody can't not be that but you. So you ain't got to go to a place, an artifice, and wear some sort of childlike apron to prove that you are innocent. You are innocent in your deed and your actions and your heart, not by your oath. Your oath was taken and your initiation was taken in initiation is death. That's it. Everything in the middle is just an exercise. It's something that's created by man for you to acknowledge and adjoin to act as if it is something memorial, when really the memory is what you take from it, not what it is. So bless Trayvon and bless all of the other Moors who were murdered by devils and the apathy of weak and undeclared Moors. Emmett Till, Willie Edwards, James Chaney, Michael McDonald, Michael Griffin, Yusef Hawkins, James Byrd, Trayvon Martin, Rodney King, the little girl from Philly, all of the other nobles that was murdered before they got a chance to nationalize. Don't let another one of us leave this earth without knowing who and what we are and knowing that there's something better for us other than this crap. So holler at me at houseofl@hotmail.com. Accept no imitators, you know what I'm saying? Check out www.darkscope418.com. For those people that have children and want to ease them into this, y'all can read it together. They could color in it. It's kind of heavy, but it ain't no heavier than Grand Theft Auto or any other Nicki Minaj songs that's on the TV or whatever. So go in. Check out www.sagasar.com and www.cookingmorewithless.com. Again, holler at me about True Nationality and what we're doing out here at Moral Science Temple 2A with Grand Sheik Jonathan L. Donaldson Bay, as well as the Queen and those of us that's really trying to do this real, man. You know what I'm saying? The glory is in the work. So, peace. Also, if anybody wants to send any donations, you could do so at dukeoftears@gmail.com for any amount. I'm striving to do a lot of things with thread budget, so it always helps, you know what I mean? So, again, dukeoftears@gmail.com through PayPal. Thank you again for the support. Through the knowledge, avenge those who have been murdered, again, by white devils and black devils. You know what I'm saying? Meaning people who believe that their color's first. Be who you are. Be and know and access who you are.